I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any items to be added, removed, or changed on the agenda?
Yes, I would like to strike executive session from the agenda for tonight.
So item number 17 will be removed. Anything else?
No.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Tillman, second by Dorsey. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. So I will entertain a motion to establish the consent agenda as follows. Approval of the meeting minutes of the regular board meeting of February 19th. Approval of meeting minutes of the special meeting for February 26th. Approval of the paid expenditures, expense approval report, investment summary, income statement, and approval of purchases.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tillman, second by Gray. Any further discussion? Shall I please call the roll?
Tony,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Riley absent, Dorsey,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye, motion carries. So I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as established.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tillman, second by Gray. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is guests, matter from the public. Anyone wishing to address the board this evening? Seeing none. Moving on to item number 7, matters of the commissioners. Anybody want to make any comments this evening? Anybody want to welcome them?
Except for Prince.
What are you looking at me for? Okay. So next item on the agenda is Batavia Parks Foundation. So I would like to welcome Corey to our meeting tonight. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll give you an opportunity to let us know what the foundation has been doing or what they've been up to. So.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you very much for having me here. I'm the new president of the Parks Foundation. Extremely excited to be able to hear. I have a nameplate now, so I'm feeling really good about life. Just to kind of update you a little bit on what we've been doing with the Parks Foundation. We are updating our website, so we're going to be going ahead and moving forward with that. We're working on a survey, actually not just a survey, we're going to be working to poll the community on some of the things that they think are important for us to be able to work on, potentially some opportunities for fundraising that they think might be very successful, but we're very interested in getting community input on that. We may have some upcoming vacancies on the board, so if anybody knows anyone who might be interested in serving on the Parks Foundation, we are extremely excited about what our future holds, and it'll be a good organization to be a part of. Other items that we've got going on, we're going to be meeting with the high school very soon regarding the scholarship program. That's something we've done for several years now. And the high school will have those applications out school soon. Those will be for high school seniors. We'll have a scholarship available through the Parks Foundation. And just want to thank everybody again for an opportunity to be here this evening and be part of your meeting. And we're looking forward to a really good relationship moving forward and being able to accomplish a lot.
Welcome. So this is kind of what Pat was alluding to in the previous segment, is welcoming people, but I was waiting for the actual report. So just so everybody understands, what happened was there was a joint meeting between the park board and the foundation board in February, where we wanted to make sure that everybody understood the relationship that we had with the foundation. And so we have a permanent seat for the foundation at every board meeting, and we'll welcome any representative and anybody from the foundation who wants to join, just so everybody understands how important the park board feels the foundation is to the park district. So welcome.
Thank you.
Well, we look forward to continuing our working relationship, but also under new leadership, and congratulate you on your new role. And certainly we will search for other people who share your passion and hopefully give you some assistance in those vacancies.
Perfect. Very much appreciated.
Welcome to the table.
Thank you.
All right, so next item on the agenda is correspondence. We have one letter from State Representative, anybody know how to pronounce this? Ugast?
Yes.
To Executive Director Niamela to reach out with any questions ahead of the legislative conference. So appreciate that.
And he's a brand new state representative for us who replaced Representative Fortner.
Next item on the agenda is announcements. Who is it going to be? Jim!
The spinner spawn.
I will be playing the
No,
part
love it.
I'll be playing the part of Katie Drummer. Announcements for March 2019. All the little bunnies are invited to hop on over for the annual Easter egg hunt on Saturday, April 13th. But please note, this popular event is being held at a new location this year. It's at Rotolo Middle School. Be sure to bring your camera and see the Easter Bunny before the hunt begins. Everyone should meet at the pavilion by 9:45 a.m. Group leaders will divide the children into age groups and take them to their separate hunt areas. At 10 a.m. sharp, the hunt will begin, and at 10:02, it'll be done. That's an editorial. Seriously, it goes really fast. Don't forget a basket to hold all the goodies. In the spirit of the event, participants are asked to please bring a non-perishable food item or paper product to be donated to the Batavia Food Pantry. Please carpool, as parking spaces can be limited at that site, and the admission is free. Not only do the little bunnies get to hunt eggs, but your dog gets to hunt Easter eggs. So join us at the Bark Park, located at West Main Community Park on Saturday, April 13th, so that your dog can hunt for Easter eggs filled with doggy treats. All dogs must be leashed during the event. Pre-registration is requested, but we will accept registration at the gate to the Bark Park starting at 11:30 a.m. A registration fee of $10 per dog. There will be pet-friendly vendors on site from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Be sure that you and your pooch are ready at noon sharp. The Doggy Egg Hunt is brought to you in cooperation with 2 Bostons and the Batavia Animal Clinic. 8 Batavia organizations are teaming up to inspire community members to preserve personal, family, and community history in conjunction with National Preservation Week, this April 22nd through the 27th. Check out all the amazing programs, such as the historic pub crawl, all the way to a special presentation by Mayor Schelke. You can see all the details and register at bataviahistoricalsociety.org. And last but not least, in cooperation with Batavia Preservation Week, the Park District is hosting a new competitive and educational special event. The Batavia Road Rally is going to be on April 27th. Batavia is the oldest city in Kane County, and with all that history comes opportunity. Compete against your fellow Batavians through a series of hints, clues, and activities. Earn points along the route as you test your knowledge of Batavia history and your navigation skills of the city. The event fee is charged per team and is just $10. The rally check-in begins at 1:30 p.m., but pre-registration is requested. Join us for this epic excursion into Batavia history, and maybe your team will be crowned the winner. For more information about all of these events, please visit the website at bataviaparks.org or give us a call at 630-879-5235. Thank you very much.
And I certainly hope that if we have real eggs at our Easter egg hunt, that we will follow the tip of the month and put a teaspoon of baking soda in the water so that it feels super easy and clean. And Eric wasn't here, but...
Yeah.
Oh, he's here.
Oh, yeah, he's here. Picture. So, but the tip of the month, right there.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Next on our agenda is staff reports, so we'll start with any updates staff may have. Don't have to.
Okay, well, the big thing for the finance department this time of year is the audit. Our field work is underway this week. Sickich is actually out all week with us doing final field work. we've been working really for a couple months now, getting all the schedules together for all the GASB statements that keep coming out year after year after year. I'd just like to take a quick moment and thank both Tammy and Tiffany. They've been a huge help getting ready for this, and Allison as well, especially giving me some context for things that happened before I was here during the year. And you don't always get to say this either, but working with our auditors has just been an absolute pleasure. Signature's been great. It's no longer that we've won awards from GFOA for so many years now. That's about it.
Great. Thank you.
Perfect. I would like to introduce our new special events and aquatic supervisor, Batavia McClure. You can come up. On the team. Beth Ann has been an employee of the district since 2003. She's been a part of the cheer program, kids club, Camp K. Beth Ann graduated from Aurora University with a degree in, say it if I'm wrong, coaching and youth sport management, correct? Mm-hmm. Awesome. We're very excited. Beth Ann's positive. She'll be a great addition to the team, and she's already eager and she's very excited to start her role. So we're very excited to have her.
I'm excited to be here. One, growing up in Batavia and actually being able to bring the knowledge of and history of Batavia, but also to try and help with the new programming and down at the quarry, somewhere I grew up, now being in charge of it. I'm super excited to be back. Took a little bit of a break, but opportunity opened up, so I put my foot in the door, and now I'm here.
Outstanding.
I'm very excited.
Awesome. Yeah. So are we.
Thank you.
And now Katie. She did leave us some updates. She would like to please let you guys, you the board, know that they are going to be doing some get-to-know videos. They'd like to do them with the park board sometime in April. Only take about 5 minutes per person. They're going to be filming mid-April to the end of April. So please get in touch with her if you would like to participate in that. She's Jennifer and Laura here have been doing filming down at the depot, getting some reminiscence of the park district on tape. So the other thing that she wanted us to let you know about is that Batavia High School design student Chloe Farhado, there you go, Farhado, has been selected to do the design. Selected for our design mentorship program, and we'll be working closely with Laura Ferguson this spring. Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's a new program that they're working with the high school on.
So you want us to reach out to Kate or have her schedule one to us?
I'll have her reach out to you and maybe do a doodle poll, so that you can enter in your availability.
Okay, sounds good.
Unfortunately, Eric and Katie are both out sick.
Oh no, I had one of those in my house last week.
I'm fine with being out.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Jimmy, you make a fantastic cake.
Okay. Don't tell her that.
Okay.
I did, are we done with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little troubled by the technology update.
Yeah.
That we had installed a different wireless system than what was already installed, and it almost sounds, you need to just correct me, if it's like, hey, we could charge them to reprogram all this stuff if we do A, B, and C. And I hate the fact that we had something installed, we contracted something different comes in, now we have to redo a bunch of stuff. So what are the ramifications of, it seems like they messed up. Are we paying the cost of that?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
Good.
So I agree 100%. That was, installed before, or that decision was made before I was in charge of technology.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
But,
Yeah, I think, but-
Steve was in charge of it.
Yeah, this didn't sound like you. It sounded like the company, they should have known what was there, right?
100% agree.
Okay.
The fortunate thing is, we can repurpose this moving forward, so, at standalone facilities like a lot or something like that, it won't have a business impact to us, nor a financial one, because we're going to put managed access in there
Yeah.
anyway. And that facility integrating with Eastside really isn't critical. That's a rental facility versus staff.
Mhm.
So I agree completely. That was a huge goof up on their part. There won't be a monetary impact to us. We're just going to have to deal with it.
It's just a time.
Correct.
That's really what I was driving at, is to make sure that, you know, when a lot of technology companies, they can do that if they can get away with it. And I just want to make sure that we were on top of it and saying, look, this is something that you guys should have known. You know,
That is
we're not going to keep that cost.
appropriate.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
I don't think that this is separate from that, but I agree with John. Are the things that are attached proposals for there's images for the mural?
Yes.
Are those proposals for the mural, or are those just some of the brainstorming images that they created?
Those are conceptual designs for the core mural.
And how are we going to go about choosing? Does that belong specifically with Katie?
So Katie has done kind of an internal vote with staff, but we would certainly love park board feedback. So it's at the very back of or actually the back of the marketing report. It's the very first of the media clippings.
Mhm.
So the first one looks like a postcard, the second one's very majestic, and the third one is very creative, abstract. So, but if the board has feedback,
Well, what did staff decide on?
the first one.
The first one? That one's very cool. I
Without the
support the
bulldozer.
staff's decision.
Yeah,
Without the
I'm trying to
bulldozer.
understand the bulldozer. You know,
Yeah, a little different.
It's not really family friendly, bulldozer.
I get it with the quarry, you know, the
Or maybe
idea of the
the
bulldozer.
bulldozer may be replaced with a wave or something.
You know,
Chuck the duck.
okay, yeah.
I think the first one is great. I think they all look great. The third one was a little, I didn't really know how to put that one, but it was cool. But the first one is definitely the best of the three, though.
Great, thank you for the feedback. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I'd like to see a little color.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 12, Executive Director's Report.
Yes. Lights, camera, action. Actually, I'll get to see it up on the big screen so we get a bigger version of it.
Excellent.
All right, well, welcome all of you out to the ATV land. This is the image that we were just talking about. So what staff really liked about it was the story that it tells within the image, within each letter, while it still really pops out as the quarry. And so this won't just be painted directly onto the pump house, it'll actually be placed on tiles. So that way they'll be removable in case for some reason one gets damaged, it can be replaced. That way we won't have to repaint a wall the entire time with inclement weather, but we will modify the placement of the artist's name. We're going to move that, so that way it's not the person's name that'll get shifted up. And the bulldozer will be removed as well, but if there's any other feedback, certainly.
Just color.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
We have a little airplane right above the banner. But we feel like this could also serve well. Brittany and Katie have been working hard on this with the artists. This could serve well as a postcard. This could serve on T-shirts and the lifeguard T-shirts. You name it, we could sell merchandise that has this fun depiction. It's going to be a mural, but we could do a lot with it. Since we're talking Hall Quarry Beach, as you know, this is our 50th anniversary, and what better way than we're showing a bunch of throwbacks up on our social media, and Terry did a great job of liking a lot of the posts. But that was then, this was 1993, and then down below is current day. So we've come a long way.
It looks like it's about 1970.
Mhm.
I mean, like 93, really?
When that compare part was installed.
Why are you looking at me?
As Jim, who was playing Katie Drum tonight, mentioned, the Doggy Easter egg hunt. This has been an extremely popular event. Not quite as popular as the Easter egg hunt for the little bunnies at home, but we really want to promote this because we know how many dog lovers there are out there. And on April 13th at 10 a.m. Is the hunt for the little bunnies. And we recommend they come half an hour early. And it is the world's quickest event, and we love the fact there's no pickup afterwards. It is the best event to clean up for. And then we can't say the same about the doggy egg hunt. There's actually a lot to clean up afterwards. Like, there are a lot of little kids that think they're Tootsie Rolls. They're like, no, this is the doggy egg hunt. No. But so we do recommend that people register in advance, but we will have registration at the gates for the doggy egg hunt. This is a promotion for our 7th and 8th grade tackle football. It's a brand new program run through the high school. Head football coach Dennis Piron is now going to be hosting this program through the Batavia Park District. So I want to encourage any of you watching at home that please come to our website, go to anywhere on our website, give us a call, 630-879-5235. We are more than happy to tell you about the 7th and 8th grade tackle football program. Since Rotolo Middle School will no longer be offering it, we are proud to be hosting it. And you'll still get the same quality coaches that you had before for an even lesser price. And since we're still talking recreation, these are little snapshots from our New Horizons preschool open house. And this open house was rescheduled 3 times because of inclement weather. We had every type of weather imaginable. We had the snowstorm, which shut everything down, shut Batavia down for a day. We had a tornado watch one night. It was just crazy. So finally, the 3rd time was the charm, and you can see it didn't stop the little ones from having a great time. Our New Horizons preschool is a very successful preschool program. It's actually open for ages 3 to 5. And it's really the first school experience away from parent. And we really specialize in that. Hire quality teachers. We encourage any of you at home watching, there's still time to register. Tonight, we have in attendance Bobby Nance. She's in charge of our recreation strategic plan. And so she'll be discussing a lot of what she's been working really in depth with staff and I on, and that is doing assessments of our recreational programming, looking at life cycles, looking at the overall programming portfolio, and she's got a lot of really tasty nuggets to share with us tonight. This is the Civic Center Gymnasium. Looks a little different since we ended up getting rid of the spring floor, but the ultimate vision has been to create this into a full-size basketball court. And so next week during spring break, we will be scuffing. Jim is correcting me on this. It's scuffing and not sanding, but scuffing. We're having a company come in to scuff the floor and refinish it. So that way it's playable. And then next year we're actually going to be taking apart the floor and doing it the right way. But we'll actually be able to offer fitness programs throughout the entire gymnasium, not just a quarter of it, and really expand pickleball, many of the other. It'll be our first full-size gymnasium in a long time. Since J. Murphy Gym is the created gymnasium. And actually that was just taken today, and you can see the pickleball players making the best of it on the one side of the gymnastics mats. IPRA, just switching gears, offered a story. It's their 75th anniversary. So they have 75 years, 75 stories. Mitch Bolin, our Director of Finance, and I were selected as what they call game changers in the industry. And so our story is told within a publication that they send out to all of their members. Chris Winter is someone we're going to be honoring tonight. She has been with the Park District for 32 years. I know that there's a little segment later on to honor her, but on the right-hand side, the right column, if you picture this divided into 2 columns, right side you can see this angelic, sweet Chris. The devious Chris is on the left side. Angel double. The prankster and the silly one. But the many faces of Chris Winter. So we will be honoring her later tonight. And the kids will definitely miss her too. She was in charge of all the 3rd grade tours and the historical trolley tours as well. There's been a lot in the community that she's been responsible for that people may not realize. She was the key for the Civil War encampment, along with Carla Hill, the Family Heritage Days back in the day at the King County Cricket Stadium, the Lincoln Dinner Theater. She's been a part of so many different facets of the Park District and the Depot Museum, but we're going to miss her greatly. That's a wrap.
Any questions for Allison?
Actually, I say that's a wrap, but I'd go right into talking about this.
Yeah. On the agenda, isn't it?
Just don't call me devious.
At least not in public.
So Chris Winter, do you want to stand during this recognition?
Sure.
Ceremonious occasion?
Not a roast.
For the cameras.
Unless you wanted to be. I'm sure we can come up with something.
The roast is for after 5.
There you go.
What is after 5? It has been my honor and privilege to work with the Batavia Depot Museum curator, Chris Winter, for 19 out of the 32 years of her service. In 1987, when Chris started, it was just 32 years ago, The Simpsons' first episode aired. President Ronald Reagan addressed the nation about the Iran-Contra affair. Cheers was the biggest hit TV show. The Bangles' Walk Like an Egyptian was the #1 hit on the music charts for the year. Baby Jessica was rescued after being trapped in a well for 2 days. I got a good reaction. And a gallon of gas was 90 cents, with the option of having full service at the gas pump.
Wow, I'm old.
Some of you may not know what full service is. I was just 13 years old, and Chris Winter had just started working at the Batavia Park District. Chris has been the face of the Batavia Depot Museum for decades. Her diverse talents, strong skill sets, and dedication have played a vital role in shaping the museum into what it is today. Former office manager and former museum director Carla Hill hired Chris Winter back in 1986. Carla hired Chris to work in the registration office twice a week back in the day when registration forms were written out in longhand. When was the last time you heard longhand? Written out in longhand, and households were entered into the system via typewriter. The pace of the Depot Museum started to pick up in the 90s, and Chris's boss, Carla, went from her dual role as office manager to the Depot Museum director to solely focus on the Depot Museum. Carla knew how talented and creative Chris was and hand-selected her to help with the museum exhibits once a week. In the year 2000, Chris was promoted to be an exhibit technician at the Depot, which later transformed into her museum curator position. Chris fully supports and embraces the partnership between the Historical Society and the Batavia Park District. She will be the first to tell you that she likes the Park District supporting the museum through the tax levy, which pays for the upkeep of the facility, staffing, supplies, and maintenance. The Historical Society is responsible for the collections and archival process. Chris values the working relationship between the two entities and acknowledges their significance. Chris is also one of the biggest advocates for the museum's expansion project and plans for converting the museum into a welcome center for Batavia. In addition, Chris has worked on a multitude of projects and events, including the Batavia Quilt and Textile Show, Lincoln Dinner Theater, and historical trolley tours. Chris has always been a champion of the museum volunteers. She knows how important they are to the museum's success. Her legacy with volunteers will have a ripple effect for years to come. So it's no surprise when Chris took the Strengths Finders assessment. Butterfingers. So it's no surprise with Chris's working relationships with people that when she took the Strengths Finders assessment, and almost all of her best attributes are centered around relationship building, communication, positivity, relator, and developer. You can keep this.
A little name
In
tag.
case you forget your strengths.
Yeah.
What's my name?
I heard that happens in retirement too. While I could go on for days about Chris's professional accomplishments, It's her personal qualities and attributes that make her so special. Everyone knows who the biggest prankster is at the Park District. She looks so innocent. She taught Director of Marketing Katie Drum a valuable lesson once. Katie used to always leave the keys in her running car when she would make a quick stop by a facility. Knowing this, Chris drove Katie's car around the block while Katie was inside. Katie came outside, thought her car was stolen. Then appeared Chris a few minutes later with her devilish grin, always teaching people to be on guard. Chris is looking forward to traveling to places like Poland with her husband Tony. She's also looking to spend more quality time with her grandson. If that wasn't enough, she's also considering volunteer roles in the community, like helping out in the RSVP office and even an animal shelter. The Batavia Park District thanks Chris for her 32 years of tireless public service, hard work, innovation, and relationship building. Chris truly has made an impact on everyone who has crossed her path, whether it's the third graders who received a tour of the museum or the people who have experienced one of her historical trolley tours. Chris is a special person, and tonight we honor her. This is a bamboo plant to bring you good luck along your travels as you write the next chapter of your life.
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Let me tell you about Alice.
Mic drop.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank the board and the staff for a wonderful experience working here. You know, I had fun because I stayed for a very long time. But working for a park district has been so rewarding. Who gets to go to a job where you just think of fun programs and events for the community to enjoy in their leisure time? Then being transferred down to the museum, I get to take all of these awesome moments, put them in a box, let them sit there for 10, 20, 30 years, bring them back out, put them on exhibit at the museum, and watch people smile and relive that moment all over again. So it's been an awesome career, and I'm ready to leave because I am tired and forget my name some days. Some very special memories here, so thank you all for putting up with me all these years in my prints.
We do have a cake for Chris.
So we will take a short recess to honor Chris, and then we'll resume our meeting. Go down.
And Eric's here to speak. Eric really wanted to He's staring at you. Right. Yeah. We pointed right at you. Chris, I think he winked at you.
Oh, sorry, Brittany.
Like Jordan came out of retirement.
Yeah. Don't see that happening really soon.
Yeah, before we break it all up.
I will.
Congratulations. Sometimes they don't come. Your life never goes in a straight line.
It was definitely, I'm driving into North Carolina. So I was,
Yeah, you're gonna pull the first
I was at the Lifetime Award. And then I was able to transfer to called Grand Open. I didn't pay that, I was just like, thank you very much. So what did you do? And then I read like 2 more days and then dropped. I was like,
So welcome.
yeah, I'm excited.
guys are very special. We're gonna miss you too.
So we
Make sure you grab a cupcake too, it's break time. Take one, take one later. He's strong. No, thanks.
No. Trust me, I'm sure she's coming back. Yeah. No, she'll come back. Well, she has to leave.
You know what? She's very eclectic.
Just throw all the colors on.
I'm just encouraging you.
Yeah. And then I was gonna say, it's clean, it's like, other than.
Chris, that cake is yours. Whatever's left of it, it's yours.
Oh,
So one of the things that
Yeah, I gotta do my meeting with them and all that.
They're really so I was like, so you were actually in between my
Like a foot of icing.
you know. Rip it off. Oh, so that's Michael was All right. That's awesome.
Yeah, I am a rustic guy. Here you go.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'll jump over that. Yeah, 'cause I really don't want to. Did you get some? Yeah.
It's out like,
Yeah. You just go. So
Back when they were for a new.
I mean, early.
in the back.
Batavia School District was able to provide fabulous programming for all parents.
Have you been able to utilize Parktelli special recreation?
So she
I waited for to go out to see, so I didn't go. It wasn't, I didn't come. My brother did that. Parked it around the whole street, and then you walk back over where my garden, and I didn't know your garden. Sounds like you. Oh, okay. Didn't make it right. You make me cry all the time. I'm 30. My sister could do it too. My
Two days later, there was still 90.
do you have an older brother, younger? Brothers are. They got sister.
You know, it's not that it's
I had it on the train. Well, it's actually what I'm my whole theory
And then just to give them a context, it's a starter project or, really having any so she's actually. So literally, $500. Yeah, it was like an invoice to check and it's like, you can't just so she's just part of
So she's part-time.
Because there's a special
program she's doing.
I can just really
that is supposed to be I'm looking at that.
She's like everybody's favorite.
You just gotta be careful.
No matter what age. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That doesn't work anymore, not there. But they were like, Jim,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. No, so I want to kind of take this. So where's your Jump in.
she's been, I mean, it seems a lot.
Clip it in. Trying to,
Yeah, a lot of cool ideas.
I guess.
I don't know, I've only known her since I, I get her. Before or after, I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm getting. Just gotta jump all. You want to do first? Texas or 21?
We're going to reconvene. And I just want to say, since we're still on item number 13A, Chris is still here. We don't expect you to stay for the whole meeting, but you can keep stuff in your face, that's okay.
Well, I'm going to finish my cake and go, but thank you very much.
No, on behalf of the board, I want to say thank you on a personal note for all of the time, energy, and effort you put into this district, because I think it's better because of you. And we certainly appreciated seeing your smiley face at all our events, and certainly hope you're back and enjoy them without any
Absolutely.
duties, right? And enjoy spending time with your family and your retirement, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you around town.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is 13B, the Recreation Strategic Master Plan Update. So you want to take this?
Sure.
A little bit?
Be happy to. Tonight in attendance with us, we have Bobby Nance. She is the president and owner of Recreation Results. And we have been working with her very closely. Brittany Bruno and her talented team have been working closely with her on a new strategic plan for specifically with a slice of recreation. So really my vision for the strategic plan this year is to hire experts within their domain. So we've got the recreation component right now. I'm looking at bringing in a consultant for the marketing component as well as parks. So we're going to have different slices of the pie, and then later on in the year, we're going to find what crosshairs there are, and we're going to come together as a team and come up with some even bigger recommendations. But tonight, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Bobby Nance.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Definitely a tough act to follow, but I am nonetheless excited to be here. So I thought that the last time that I spoke, had the chance to speak with the board was really just to introduce the work to be done. So tonight I'm going to try as efficiently as possible to give you an overview of all the work that has actually been done since and finish it up with some of our initial recommendations. So as a quick reminder, this was the kind of process or time frame for the project. So the idea was we would do some initial analysis that dug a little bit deeper into internal data and a little bit more about what's going on in the country as it relates specifically to recreation to build off of that community survey that had already been done. And use some of that data to actually create a framework to try and evaluate the programs themselves a little bit deeper than just saying, here's how many you offered of something, but to hopefully dig a little bit deeper into that and help use that data and use that framework to first assess the programs and then help that guide some of the recommendations as well. So with that initial analysis, we did a dive kind of in some internal areas and external areas. So a lot of the recommendations and the information that will be shared are actually based off of internal data, so the real things that are happening within the organization. Any of the data, just so you know that I showed you, I exported and analyzed a 3-year time period of all recreation programs and participants. So the data kind of stopped last fall, so anything that's kind of happened since wouldn't necessarily be reflected in the data. But we were looking at everything from program offerings to participation, registration, and then externally looked at some studies and research about what's going on in the country right now with recreation trends, and also looked locally what the kind of participation and market potential was for different areas, specifically to Batavia as well. Just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that staff has gotten to see as the results of this, and so that I didn't just bombard people with a ton of spreadsheets. We did things like actually export all of the program participants and look at, like I said, some trends local to Batavia, but even mapped out program participants and where they live in the area and even across the whole country. There were a few scattered even outside of Illinois. So staff have access to this information. Additionally, the kind of data and analysis of the data that came from RecTrack, a lot of it was placed into dashboards so that staff could actually interact, and as they had questions, dig a little bit deeper. So this is just an example of a dashboard that shows the overview of program participants over the past essentially 3 years and where that fell, a little bit about who they were. So both tonight I can potentially answer some questions if you have them, but at the same time you can kind of know that staff have access and have been able to kind of play around and explore things to this level as well.
And I'd like to invite the board to interject with any questions that you may have or comments.
Do we have access to this at all? Like, if we wanted to be able to view and interact with the dashboard, could we get access?
Mm-hmm. We can give you that, yeah.
Cool.
So just a couple of highlights of insights of things that sort of stuck out from that data is that, the district is up to nearly half of registrations being taken online. We're very much moving towards a mobile-focused society. So it's not only that the registration process needs to be easy to use online, but it will have growing importance for the website itself also to be, as people navigate that and try and learn more about the programs. I thought too, anyone working in recreation, including myself, whenever I did it, always kind of complains a bit about sometimes people signing up at the last minute. And so 25% of registrations were entered within a week of the program start date at this organization in that 3-year time period. So I think that's both a reflection of where society is going. We're not expecting that number to actually shrink backwards in the other direction. To a certain extent, it also plays to the customer service of this organization that they're able to accommodate that. And so I think strategically, the staff can try and think of ways to encourage that earlier to kind of take off that last minute load, but at the same time, it's I think also just important to know that's the way the world is going as well.
Could I just ask on that note, is there any factor, or consideration given to, I know when I was little kids when we were doing this, which would have been here 3 years ago, waiting, is a program going to run? Kind of like that situation too. Is that considered anywhere in here?
It wasn't it was when the registration
Got it, okay.
So I think for some of this stuff, what we tried to pull out were highlights and make sure that all of our conversations as it related to what's going on and what recommendations were based in fact, not sort of, oh my gut's this, or it feels like this, so that we could confirm some of those things to a certain extent. As staff themselves ask questions of the data, or especially in the course of this report and the data that's already been created, there is the potential to kind of dig deeper and drill down using those dashboards to kind of look and see, well, maybe what areas are. So if there are additional questions like that, the data is kind of there to dig into.
Well, that 25% isn't really new. That actually has been holding true for decades. Every one of my programs, we had jumps in numbers the last week or two. I'd be interested to see it, actually more than a week, to see if that number goes as high as 50% in the 2 weeks before the program starts. Because what happens is everybody knows that their child's going to be in the program, but they're like, I'll register later, register later. Oh, it starts Saturday, I have to register today.
Yeah.
So you get that, and even though we put it in the book, 2 months out, it generally, I really would be interested to see 2-3 weeks out, that number probably is a lot higher than 25%. So that's actually something that we could use when we're doing our programs, to know that if those are trends, particularly broken out by program, you could say, we have 10 now, but you know what, we should plan for 16.
Yeah, yeah, so I didn't, this is just an example of where some of those deeper dives are available. I don't have this one broken down by the program, but you can kind of see essentially, this is registrations where 0 is day of program, and then kind of how it builds, just like you said, so.
And what's interesting from a marketing standpoint, we've tried early bird discounts to see how that works. And actually, we've discovered that people are willing to pay the convenience fee of registering later.
Last minute Charlie discount.
That's right.
A question that I had, of that 43% of registrations that are taken online, do you, or is it possible to differentiate what's been done on mobile versus what's been done on a desktop?
I believe, I don't know that it is through the system, but I know, I'm fairly certain that RecTrack, I don't want to misspeak, I'll say some registration softwares, because I can be certain about that, allow you to actually install like a Google Analytics tracking pixel basically in the online software, in which case that allows those systems through Google Analytics to actually understand what browsers or where people are coming from. And I don't want to misspeak that RecTrack can or can't do that, but that would be the way it would be accomplished.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Just a couple of other items of note. So the highest majority of programs are one-day programs, which is great, once again, for convenience sake, for customers that are looking for lower commitment. But then the next kind of highest program or most popular program length really jumps to 6 to 7 weeks, which we're starting to see things trend more towards, if it's going to be a continued program, 3 to 4 weeks. So just kind of something to be aware of. Also, currently programs that are labeled as summer and fall generate nearly 3/4 of your total registration. So summer, especially in the Midwest, is always going to be hugely popular. And in a meeting with staff, Allison pointed out that fall programs also include your year-round programs. So there are some tweaks to the way things that are entered in RecTrack that will be part of my the more detailed recommendations that will be One of those examples would be pulling out school year programs and year-round programs from fall programs, so you can definitely get those split out numbers. And you can see it's probably no surprise, but youth sports programs account for a huge majority of overall program registrations as well. This is mapped out the number of people by age. So you can see, obviously, as is the case at pretty much every park and rec agency across the country, that youth participation makes up a vast amount of participation. I would say at this district, the kind of adult participation peaks a little older than some, which both speaks to quality of senior programs at the organization, but then also shows a definite opportunity for serving younger adults. And by younger adults, I mean like in late 20s, 30s, and 40s. Just a couple of other things. We looked at last fall what was attracting new households, so people who created a household account for the first time with the organization. So it was an interesting mix of some of the programs that really align with your core services, and then also things like first aid and CPR. So I think sometimes classes, and I'll show a couple of other examples, but classes like first aid and CPR might seem not really important, but if the organization, once they realize things like that, could actually realize that first aid and CPR is a good marketing potential for new households. So there's a little bit of unique cross-promotion recommendations that come out of this data by seeing it this way, more so than just, typical, oh, they're the same age, so you should cross-promote. In this case, it's allowing us to see some unique opportunities. We also looked kind of at the inverse, so classes where someone signed up once and then they didn't, at least in that 3-year period, didn't come back and do something else. And so we saw a high majority of those were special event programs, and some of the sports camps that were offered in conjunction with the high school that were those.
Can we dig a little bit deeper, because this one actually bothered me as the statistics kind of person, because I would expect that with these three, especially in a 3-year period. But I would like to actually see this without these three. Because when you consider, and this is just, if you just took it just at a rudimentary level, high school sports camps, you're going to lose at least 25% of your folks every year, right? So it's a tainted statistic, especially if it's a 2-year, if it's like 7th and 8th, if you have freshman and sophomore, half of your group is going to be falling into this didn't come back, right? Special events, same thing. Rules of the road, everybody doesn't come back. So I kind of want to see this with programs that we would expect people to go several years in a row.
Yeah.
And that would really tell us something with this statistic, rather than these three where we would almost expect these to be the...
Well, and the one thing I would say is it's not just that they didn't come back to that specific program, they didn't do anything else with the district at all.
And again, I would expect that with these three. It's a special event, somebody stopped in, did that event, and they may not even live around here. So, high school sports camps, again, when you lose, if you're talking about seniors, they're not back for 4 years. So, you know what I'm saying? So, or now you're into a different demographic with some of these older high school students where that's a really tough demographic to get them to do anything. So I would expect that. And so I would really like to see us do some analytics to say, you know what, I expect this group is going to be one of these that's really tough to come back in a 3-year period. Let's put that in a separate category. Fine, do some analysis on that because it's going to help. But really, if we're trying to do some metrics on these programs that lost folks and didn't come back to the district and why, this really isn't a good representation, in my opinion, of how we can try to tweak our programs to retain folks.
So when you have access to the dashboards, this is actually one that kind of pulls all of those people that kind of fit in that category. So you can see that kind of the next categories are behind sports and special events fall under active adults, and then fitness programs and senior programs. So you can actually see event by event kind of where that's happening. So in some of those, I would agree with you. I think it speaks partially to the fact that these are, marketing opportunities to realize that special events are drawing people in. That seems kind of obvious, but sometimes seeing it on a chart really helps drive it home. So, to realize the potential for cross-promotion, or that these might be people who are really just coming for this one thing, and if we don't grab them now, then we might lose them. But at the same time, there are some classes in there.
See, I would expect the active adults and fitness, I would expect those to be ones where we expect people to come back year after year after year. And if they didn't, now we have something that we really need to work with.
Yeah, the top one on the list that for me kind of jumped out was the beginning yoga class. That's one you would, see some continuing, you would expect continuing participation.
Unless you had an intermediate and advanced yoga class.
Well, but these people did not sign up for anything at all.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And the youth variety, just to note, that's actually our Geneva co-op classes.
Okay.
So you're saying that 874 people who signed up for sports or sports camps didn't come back?
In a 3-year period. Yeah.
So within that 3-year period, they may, but for sports
No, but
camps,
let's say you took football that has 600 participants in it. You're going to lose 150.
no, but you look at the football sports camp. So Bulldog camp is 65 participants, or is that?
Yes.
So 65 participants.
Right.
Those are kids that might be freshmen or sophomores, and they graduate by senior year. So within 3 years, they're not going to come back.
Exactly, that's the point you make, right?
Right.
So that's going to skew that statistic out. If there's nothing wrong with the program, that's just the way it works. And so if we're going to be using these metrics to try to help our marketing and help our programming analysis, that really kind of skews us, and we're jumping down a rabbit hole we really don't need to jump down, because there's nothing wrong, as an example, with the football program, but there may be something wrong with program ABC that we need to pump up, and we're going to lose focus if we're looking at the wrong metrics.
Right, so this is not necessarily a recommendation yet at this point. It's just kind of showing some of the analysis that was done. And I think since we have this one pulled up, the recommendation for me that kind of came from this was thinking more creatively about what are opportunities for cross promotion, and but also because wellness is such a huge right now consumer trend, it targets an age group that the district isn't serving as highly in terms of younger adults. That in this case, when we see things like beginning yoga and some other fitness classes, to me, those might be opportunities to follow up with those participants or do some lost customer surveys specifically in those specific areas where we wouldn't expect to see these higher up on the list.
And Kathy Friedland brought up a good point outside of our meeting the other day, and she said that, generally speaking with beginning yoga, you get people that it's a fitness resolution to get into shape, but they don't want to take like a cardio class, so they take yoga. And then they decide, after March, I'm good, my resolution's up, I'm done.
The gym opens up in March.
Yeah, right.
But I love the dashboard. This is a great,
Yeah.
It's the first time I've really been able to see in depth some of the things that we've been asking for.
So that was kind of the initial, just some of the highlights, I think, from the analysis. So then the other aspect that we did was kind of look at the way it relates to the brochure. It relates a bit to how people find information in the online, search functionality of doing online registration, is kind of how programs are organized. And so I think the point for this slide was just to show some recommendations and talking with staff about tweaking the way that some of those programs were organized, or that they might be presented to the public. So for example, expanding the concept of special events to be events and experiences. The concept of experiences, it probably sounds kind of commonplace, but that in and of itself, and that word is a huge consumer trend right now. I think by mapping things out some ways too, we saw some gaps in program offerings, specifically in what I recommended were not just to be called adult sports, but to lump in some of that outdoor adventure programs and reference them as active pursuits. The top 3 reasons why people participate in outdoor adventure programs actually have nothing to do with being outside in nature. That's number 4. So it's all about fitness, exercising, staying fit, and hanging out with family and friends. And so by hopefully just turning things around a little bit and helping reframe things in the way that customers will think about them as opposed to kind of how it's organized internally from staff, hopefully that will help emphasize some of this. But the kind of areas that really seem to come across as having gaps in terms of program offerings was in the adult sports and active pursuits areas. There are, of course, some, but adult classes and workshops, which was also reflected in the community survey. And then I also highlighted family programs, not necessarily because the district doesn't offer any, but family programming and like parent-child or multi-generational special events was one of the biggest ways that the district's currently attracting those younger adults. And so even though the programs might not seem like they're specifically for that younger adult, it is one way the district's been really successful about attracting them. So then we moved on to developing the framework, which essentially just was a discussion among staff and leadership of the organization about what the priorities were when it came to why you offer a program and how would you determine when a program really meets the organization's mission, like when it makes sense from a service perspective, and also when does it make sense from an operational perspective, or when would we consider it successful from an operational perspective. And so in speaking with staff, the idea was to be able to map this out visually. If you haven't figured that out, I'm big on that. So the first thing we talked about were what those maybe operational priorities or definitions of success would be. And so we settled on looking at, how many people is it attracting, what kind of, is it feeding itself on word of mouth, or is there a lot of extra push needed to pull people in? How is it performing compared to budget? What's the overall net revenue, and kind of what's that load to get that program to run in terms of resources needed or the work needed? From a service perspective, we narrowed it down to kind of 3 areas, although one's sort of cheating because it has a bunch of sub-areas. But essentially, is the district the only one really offering it in the community, or best kind of served to do that? If not, what's the market position? And then also just how does it align with service priorities? And so this was something that we had to decide upon it as a group, like when we offer recreation, when you all offer recreation programs, what really gets to the core of what you should be offering, because there's a ton of programs that could be offered. And so these are the ones that we're kind of settled on. So they do include some things like, creating a social connection or getting people into parks or connecting them with nature, but also for this to be something that grows over time, these factors could be changed. But we also included things like addresses a current programming gap or serves an identified underserved audience. So as those audiences changes or potential gaps change, that this framework can still work, but it'll adapt over time as needs change. So with that, staff then essentially took an assessment to analyze, it was I think right around 100 programs, just to kind of see where they fell according to these categories, with the idea that this would allow us to actually create some recommendations. So for example, programs that are really scoring high as it relates to service priorities and are doing really well as it relates to those operational priorities, those are programs you want to, A, make sure you stick around because they're really successful operationally and make a lot of sense from a mission perspective. And if possible, may try to expand or build upon to offer kind of stair-step programs or similar programs to that to kind of build upon that market. The opposite end, programs that don't make sense from a mission perspective and aren't performing well, to reevaluate, should they be changed or potentially should they even be offered? those programs that are doing well operationally, not so great mission-wise, working to extract a little more value from them. And then on the flip side, things are doing really well, like really meet the mission, but just operationally are hard to run or aren't being run as successfully. So it could be a mix of either of those two. Are there ways to partner or change things up a bit so that they're not such an intense workload, or so that they can be more successful? And then there's a bunch of programs that'll end up in the middle, but at the corners are the extremes and are more than enough for staff to look at the first round. So this was the concept behind that framework. So then staff, as I mentioned, actually analyze their programs. Not every single program they offer, but a good representation of their programs. And essentially we came out with data that looks like this. So going back to those recommendations that I talked about, some examples of programs that follow in that area. The good news is under sustain and expand, that's where the majority of the programs fell. So the majority of the programs fell kind of in the middle, or this category had a larger majority of other categories. So you can see different programs that are representative of this area. So a lot of special events, a lot of those youth sports programs, some of the core fitness programs, some of the core senior programs, things like swim lessons and those kinds of things fell in this area. And so in this case, we would just recommend that it should be a priority to make sure that these stay successful. And if there's any way to sort of duplicate the success or build upon the success, that these would be things that would make a lot of sense for the organization to do that. The next area under extract more value. So these were things that were doing really well operationally, but may not have always done quite as well as it related to those service priorities. So this is where things like those recommendations for cross-promoting could come from. That's the way to get more value out of like the rules of the road program. Might not make a ton of sense for our recreation agency to offer, but at the same time, they're bringing in, we saw from some of those other examples, a lot of new people to the organization, so that could be a way to kind of get people in. So as long as the district is taking advantage of that, then it makes sense to continue to offer programs like this. So over time, programs that fall in this area, also a recommendation could be to look at potentially, it could be increasing pricing, or at least just looking at what the market is pricing in those areas as other ways to kind of get more value. In that upper left-hand corner, these were those programs that really seemed to meet the kind of mission of the district, but either based on things like the workload and the marketing support needed and those kinds of things, or participation may not be doing quite as successful from an operational standpoint. And in this case, it may just be tweaking things to pump up registration or to make the programs a little bit easier to run. Additionally, partnership opportunities here to help it with the support as it relates to workload or marketing or getting more people in the door are also an opportunity here. And then in that last category where the district should look at reevaluating, these are the areas that scored low in both axes. So things like some of the cheerleading programs, some of the pet classes, and a few senior-related classes fell in this area. So I know that was a lot. Did anyone have any questions about this portion?
For me, I feel as though, when we look at the data that you gave us at the beginning, as far as groups of people, program participation, and then we start to get into the insights on the different groups and things like that, I feel as though is time of day recorded on the dashboard, like when a class is offered and who's attending, as far as like age groups go?
It's not specifically. but it doesn't mean, I think that it's it may be in the data. I'm not 100% sure if it got exported with the data. I would have to double check. Sometimes I struggle a bit with showing days of the week and time of day because to a certain extent, sometimes people will take that as like these are the most popular times, but it has to be done with the caveat of these are the most popular times of what you offered. So for example, if you never offer a fitness program on Sunday morning, that might actually be the perfect time for the community, but that would never show up if you never offered it at that time.
Right. And that's what I'm thinking is, when we look at participation levels dropping off for people that generally are going to be at work, right? Most people are going to be leaving at 5 p.m., like leaving work at 5 p.m. So they're not even going to have availability to attend a class unless it's being offered at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. So that's just something that I'm, bringing around. That's all.
I think this is a lot of great information. There's a lot here that, there's a lot here. But I think we need to be careful because if you were to look at some of the sustain and expand, extract more value, some of those real positive categories, at the same time, the top 10 on the list of people that don't come back in the 3 years is all of the programs, a lot of the programs listed in those categories. And that's that rabbit hole I don't think we want to really go down a lot. And that's why I was like, we have to make sure we understand the numbers that we're looking at versus just, the fact that, okay, these folks aren't coming back, but there's a reason. But it's interesting because those same things fall into these top categories.
Yeah. Yep.
And I just think we need to be careful looking at the data that we understand the entire, as a whole, rather than one page at a time.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think, if anything, through the conversations with staff, it's a lot of, well, on this hand, it doesn't seem to, but on this hand, it's, it does seem to, whatever that, option is. And so, that was part of the reason. I think, if anything, a lot of this process was getting to just understand and having a baseline, a fuller understanding of what was going on with programming, and hopefully from more than one sense than just looking at it from one statistic area or one side of things, to be able to show some of that nuance, because it can be really complicated, and data completely factual data can definitely lead you down the wrong path if you don't understand the unknown unknowns.
Right.
So,
The big picture.
yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate the data that you have. I'm excited to actually have access to the dashboard itself, because I think when you look at the dashboard and you apply the data that you're giving us to our needs assessment, it can actually help us in generating new programs as well as reevaluating, some of these things. Like, the Spirit Cheer team, I think we all kind of knew by, renovating the gym and getting the gym, that's a program that's not really sustainable over time, but I think there's a lot of work for Brittany.
And that dashboard tool is really going to be used a lot by Brittany. Obviously, I'll be working with it too, but working with Brittany on developing work plan goals for staff, but also district goals. And that's why we're really excited for Bobby's recommendations, which I think are next, right? Is that your next slide? But yeah, so Brittany is going to be really doing the deep dive in the day-to-day with the dashboard tool. And it's really going to help us with that quarterly report that the board would like to see for the recreation report, that quarterly metric report, where there's everything is tied either back to the needs assessment or back to operations, back to our mission, why we're doing what we do, and it's all driven by the community.
So speaking of some of those recommendations, and to a certain extent, I can see, as the different pieces of the strategic plan come together too, there may be some cases where the other groups find something that seems like we'll have to, figure out how those fit together. In some cases, hopefully we'll see some overlap where there's some of the same recommendations as well. So these obviously will evolve a bit with the rest of the plan. The other thing I did want to show too, I forgot, with the assessment in evaluating those questions, we were also able to do a life cycle assessment. So one area of note is that essentially, I think the district can do a better job of introducing new programs and especially having a real focus on getting those from introductory stage to kind of gaining traction so that they get up to performing. Sometimes that takes a little extra concerted effort and just a little extra focus. So I do think that that's needed to make sure that as programs do cycle out at the end, there's enough new stuff coming in on the front end to sustain it. So with those recommendations, kind of based on a lot of what you've seen, that I wouldn't want anyone to take the recommendations from the program operation and service assessment as a prescription, but more as kind of help open your eyes to be part of the consideration in terms of what to do kind of with programs, but definitely to consider the recommendations from that assessment. I think definitely some of those program gaps and age gaps in terms of who's being served and what's being offered that were already mentioned are important to consider. And that, as I just mentioned, an increased focus on increasing the number of introductory programs and building that up to getting that kind of second stage in the life cycle increased as well is really important. I think too, the nice thing about coming up with those operational and service priorities, we use them in this case at the end of a program after programs have kind of taken place over time, but also now that those have been established, it can be a way for staff to identify and evaluate programs before offering them to make sure, do these fit from a mission standpoint? Do they seem like we think from a service standpoint they make sense? So can actually help, I think, guide program development when it comes to those new programs, I would hope. But that this assessment would be continued to use to kind of monitor life cycle stages and also just where programs are falling in those stages. I also just have some recommendations on ways to better use RecTrack and the way that data is implemented that'll help with analyzing the data and making the data better that gets pulled out. And also hopefully a couple of those will make things a little bit more customer friendly too. In terms of just program pricing, there are a few places, I don't recommend anything really strongly from this time around, but in the future, as the assessment is redone, pricing might actually become a stronger recommendation from some of the assessment results. But I would say that the current cost recovery model for pricing, I would recommend that the district uses those new service priorities to evaluate potentially if any programs should move up or down those pricing levels now that those have been established. And also we've had some discussion about reviewing contractual agreements to be still fair, like not about taking away anything from either group, but actually ways that those could be switched around to be more favorable and allow the district to be more flexible with determining pricing in the future. From a marketing standpoint, just using some of those new categories to reposition programs, I think will help a little bit. And then as it relates to some of those opportunities that were identified for cross-promotion or to really take advantage of those people we recognize at a certain event or a certain type of program that might be here just for this and we might not see them again if you don't capture them at that time, just to kind of try and take advantage of those opportunities. And also just mention that the brochure and the number of actual photos in the brochure is great, but staff really alluded to the fact that it was instructors and kind of what goes on in the program more than stuff and facilities that is what really keeps people here. So if that's the case, incorporating more stories or quotes or testimonials to really show off the magic that happens in your programs that might not be visible in a photo all the time, I think will be really important. And then from an evaluation perspective, I do think that there's some specific lost customer surveying or evaluation that can happen in certain areas, especially wellness programs. And just in general, I have some recommendations for them in terms of increasing the consistency and feedback of that post-program evaluations. And as it relates to kind of the metrics that are being tracked, just looking at the last report that, or an example of a report that Allison had sent me, right now, a lot of them are very focused on how the programs are filled, which is an important thing to track, but I would also really recommend that if you can get the evaluations happening on a more regular basis, and that customer satisfaction should be one of those metrics, because I think life cycle stages and getting those introductory programs is important for long-term success. I think a metric about where programs fall in that life cycle is important, and I would also just recommend as a baseline metric, tracking the number of individuals served and how many programs kind of per person people are participating in. Would be some of those newer baseline metrics that would help both push the recommendations in this report, but also give a fuller picture of what's going on. And that's it.
That's a lot.
I know.
That's great. There's a lot of really good stuff there. As the totality of it is great. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And like Pat said, it's probably more data than we've ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I think it would be helpful, and again, from our perspective in our chair, it's not about necessarily mining ourselves in the details of the program, but understanding more comprehensively, because again, our filter of where the park district needs to go as the leaders of the organization would need to be able to take that data and assimilate that with, as Tom talked about, the community survey, and begin to understand what implications our future decision-making has on our program, because ultimately that's our driver. And more importantly, how we can engage more people in the community to want to participate more at every level, or continue their participation. So this has been really, really great. I really would like to get access to the dashboard, though, for all of us, and get access to the dashboard. So. Terrific. Thanks for coming out tonight. It's great presentation.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Have a good plan for us. 4 months.
Yeah, it shows.
Yeah,
It's great.
It's going to be awesome stuff.
It can be pretty dizzying sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Next item on the agenda is capital development progress report. Jim?
All right. Rather quickly here, we've got some 2018 projects that are being completed or will be completed at the Spring Eastside Center Playground. We're currently waiting while the fencing contractor fabricates all the railings and fencing for the playground that will go along this fence on top of the new poured wall, I guess, Van Buren Street, and then to separate the playground area from the new ramps.
I don't remember, Jim. That's not changing? Is it?
No, it's a wrought iron.
Wrought iron?
Yeah.
Actual wrought iron?
Yeah, galvanized and powder coated. So it's really, we are paying a premium, but it should last us a good long time. It's not just spray painted or painted material. So then the Eastside Center parking lot, I've met this week with the contractor, and now that we're hopefully past winter, they're getting ready to, the asphalt plants are not open yet, obviously, but will be within the month, and we are targeting what work he has left and when we can get that done, and we've got some goals to, we'd like to see it, to have the new surface course down prior to Tucker Truck, which is May 10th. We've got a knock on wood that Mother Nature.
There's still some old snow there, isn't there?
There's still old snow.
There's
Oh, yeah.
relatively old snow, yeah.
Well, yeah, and those piles,
I know.
they can be there for a while.
Right. What kind of
They're-
sustained temperature do you need for that asphalt?
We need 50 and rising.
But just for how long?
You need an asphalt plant.
Even for the asphalt plant. Yeah, right, exactly.
So like if you're like 50 and over for like a week,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that kind of thing? Or is it like just, okay, it's 50?
Yeah, usually the asphalt plants won't open before like April 15th.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of like.
So we're a month out.
April 18th or so.
And then the 2019 projects, we're going to be talking about Jones Meadow and Memorial Playgrounds here in a little while. Those that we opened the bids on the 7th, and we'll be getting to talk about that. East Side Center renovation project. I have walked over that place more now than I think I ever did even back when we rehabbed it. And it's kind of been fun to go back through and understand why we did things and what we did. And the new plans are coming together. We had a very successful meeting with the Historical Preservation Committee on the 11th. They were very kind, very complimentary to you as a board and to me as a staff for what we're doing there in particular, but in the district in general. And they unanimously gave us our certificate of appropriateness, so we have crossed that hurdle.
I'm in good standing with them.
Yeah, plans are going to be submitted for building department review. They are putting all the last details together, as you can well imagine, for our new kitchen process, and it's being an interesting challenge to work with the old building and try to build this new thing into it. So I think we're going to be very successful. Big Woods site renovation that did released this morning, and we will be opening that on April 4th, so we'll be getting that to you next month for award contract. That's the new tennis court and the new pathways. And we wrapped in the Payne Woods access path into that project as well, because we were able to really get a good economy of scale on the asphalt numbers, so that's good. And last but not least, you'll remember we are partnering with the city of Batavia on a stream bank restoration project at Woodland Hills Park. That's the corner of Woodland Hills Drive and Wintergreen Terrace. They opened those bids yesterday and came in very well. They will be going through their approval process later in the month, later in April. And that project, they hope to be rolling again in certainly late April into May. So we will see a lot of activity there. And I included the picture of the Portland Place design.
Looks like a boot.
You know, I didn't really realize that until I looked at it in color. It looks like a Christmas stocking. That's what I thought. It's like a fluffy sock. But, and obviously you don't see it with this view. You know, once you're on the ground with it, why it's not quite as big. So, any questions about what's going on? We've got a lot rolling. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Wonderful.
We're really cooking.
There you go.
Wow, that's that renovation.
All right, so next item on the agenda is 15A, award the contract for playground replacement projects at Jones Meadow Park and Memorial Park.
We, as I said, we opened this bid on the 7th. The as-bid, or as-read bid sheet is here, as well as the tiny tabulation sheet from Upland, that just to give you an idea of how many companies bid to us and what all their total numbers were.
How does this compare to our budget?
Oh, well, yeah, we were at about $375,000 for construction, and we're at $276,198. So that's we are $98,800 below our budget.
We like answering that question.
That's good. All right, so I would entertain a motion to award the contract for installation of new playground equipment and associated site work at Jones Meadow Park and Memorial Park to the lowest responsive bidder, Hacienda Landscaping, in the sum of $276,198.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tillman, second by Gray. Any further discussion?
Yes, we have. The last project they did with us was Instrom. They were the installers of the playground and all of that stuff. Yes. I was also going to say that this incorporates two alternates as well, and we're still that far. So we're going to be able to add a piece of sidewalk that we've had some requests for at Memorial, and some new underdrain at Jones Meadow, which isn't real sexy, but it's going to help a lot.
Great. Any further discussion? Shelley, please call the roll.
Tillman.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Riley, absent, Dorsey.
Aye.
Callahan.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next time on the agenda rather, is 15B. So this is a approval of resolution number 255. So I'll read it this way before, and I'll let you jump in after I read it exactly. So I would entertain a motion to approve resolution number 255, approving and authorizing, number one, PMA Financial Network, Inc. and PMA Security to provide investment services, and two, execution of a declaration of trust establishing the Illinois Public Reserves Investment Management Trust as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tillman, seconded by Gray. Okay.
So the resolution is essentially to allow us to establish with board approval a relationship with PMA. We haven't done any business with yet. They're a well-established firm in the government sector. They work with libraries, school districts, park districts, counties, you name it. I have some colleagues that I have good relationships with that have had success with them. I've worked with them in the past. The fund we're looking at is very secure. It's AAA rated. It's also liquid, so it'll allow us to draw on it for operations if need be, while lowering some of our collateral costs at our current institution by not keeping such a large balance there and earning more interest.
Sure. A lot of my friends do a lot of work with PMA, so very familiar. Any further discussion by the board? Shelley, please call the roll.
Tillman.
Aye.
Gray. Aye. Riley, absent, Dorsey.
Aye.
Callahan.
Aye, motion carries. Last item this evening, before adjournment, is Foxborough Special Rec. Any updates?
Yes, before your place, you'll see the Fox Valley Special Recreation Association is offering their famous barbecue. I can't say infamous, it's famous. Barbecue and raffle, and 100% of the proceeds will go back to this organization that does so much for people with special needs. The event is Wednesday, April 10th, and for those of you watching at home, you can go to their website to purchase either silent auction tickets or barbecue chicken tickets. Their website is www.fv, as in Victor, sra.org.
Sure, thank you. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:39.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tillman, second by Gray. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.